Epigenetics was the natural progression for me because I wasn't interested in being a natural medicine doctor. Like chiropractic internist is a great thing because they go through all the chemistry for 3 years. All you're doing is going through chemistry and physiology and what this lab means and what that lab means. And if you push this, what this changes in the body back and forth. It's really great. Other than teaching you like healthy dieting and things like that, they don't really teach you how to fix things. They say, well, this nutrient can do this nutrient can do this. But it almost lends itself a little to the natural medicine side, which is like you give this herb and you can help that. Epigenetics more was the expression of disease. You're in a room. All the walls are covered with circuit breakers everywhere, these tiny billions of circuit breakers everywhere. When you're born, there's a handful of circuit breakers that are popped. You have these circuits that go into the room, their diet, their hormones, their toxins, their deficiencies, there's organ dysfunctions, like whatever, bad stress management, you don't drink enough water, whatever. So all these things are another circuit into the room. At some point in time, when enough of those go wrong, you have more circuits pop. And those are genes. And a histone, if you think of a histone like a spool of thread, and it has all this data on it as it's wrapped up around this spool. You can't read it. It's not like a book where you can sit there and just read through it. It's all wrapped up. But as you get under more and more stressors, and that can be emotional stress too, not just physiologic, biochemical, that's going to open up and all of a sudden your body can read it. And it says rheumatoid arthritis. It says thyroid disease. Not literally, but you know what I'm saying. And then your body starts to shut down your thyroid. Your body starts to swell up your joints. And something that is in your DNA, I ask people all the time, I'm like, all right, so I look at a couple of different factors, like, hey, you're not sleeping well, you don't have a lot of energy, your short-term memory is decreasing, and you're diabetic. You have Alzheimer's in your family? And they say, yes. Okay, so we have to start working on these factors because the first few symptoms that you get with Alzheimer's are sleep-wake cycle issues and short-term memory. We want to make sure you don't go there. You have it in your family. We need to take precautions to make sure you're elite in your eating and change the way things are affecting you so that you don't get that. If you don't have Alzheimer's in your family, chances are you're not going to get it, but with those symptoms, you're damaging the hippocampus of your brain, which is the first spot to degenerate with Alzheimer's. So you're probably not going to get that disease, but you are damaging that part of your brain, so we need to figure out why you're damaging it. You'd be surprised, actually. In chiropractic school, they talk a lot about epigenetics and making sure the body's moving appropriately and maintaining proper nervous system activity so that you don't express disease. They're really talking at a very macro level about what epigenetics is. Like, give the body what it needs and disease goes away. They really talk like that. It's the natural progression in the minds of chiropractors. They may not apply it the way I do, but that's a thought. So I found a process out of Indiana where it's a year program on the study of epigenetics, the study of what humans throughout history did and their disease processes and the percentage of people that got certain diseases when humans had clean air, clean water, they moved consistently and ate a human specific diet, no processed foods, basically meat, vegetables, occasional fruits, some nuts, some seeds they find, and that's the hunter-gatherer type of diet. And they were relatively free of all chronic disease. And actually, when you adjust for childhood mortality, they actually had one more year of healthy life than we do now. Now they had all these diseases as kids and they would die. They didn't handle things right and kids would die. And then they go, oh, well, they only lived till they were 40 years old. How are they going to get diseases? That's not true. What's true is a bunch of the kids died and that altered their life expectancy to be much lower. But once they got past that age, they lived a normal life and actually 1 year longer than we do now. I think people mix genetic with congenital abnormalities. Congenital abnormalities is something you're born with. It's something that's hardwired into your data that you're going to express. Most autoimmune diseases don't come on until you're somewhere between 15 and 35, somewhere in there. There's some people who get them young. I've heard of kids, I've had patients here, children who had, severe eczema all over their skin. It's actually amazing. I brought that up. Some parents just sent me a before and after of their 5-year-old who had severe eczema all over their face and body up into her hair. So she lost all of her hair. And they just sent me before and after. She's totally perfect now. And all we did was find out why she had it. Well, we did a bunch of testing. I did literally the most in-depth genetic testing that exists. We did like 90 pages of line by line data. And I personally break them all down. It takes me a couple hours to get through it and then create a genetic picture. And then we can actually change the way she's expressing genes. I mean, I have a number for cancer, which is out of Harvard, which is 5 to 10% are actually genetic driven cancers. Everything else is lifestyle. So 23andMe, and I don't mean to disregard testing of any sort. I think 23andMe is probably really fun for heritage and things like that. And I used to run 23andMe 5, 6, 7 years ago when I thought that was so neat, because I got a platform that was able to break that down. And then it came out, they're using this very, very inexpensive way to break down genetics, and they may be as effective as like 40% accurate. So it's like less than a flip of a coin. You could flip a coin and just guess what your gene is, and you got a better chance than 23andMe. The genetic testing we use, they have 3 different forms of verification as they go through this, whatever staining method they use. With that being said, the accuracy is upwards of 95% on what they're pulling. So it's very specific. It's not a heritage test. It's not an ancestry test. It's specific to pathways in the body and how you potentially can utilize or underutilize different methylation pathways. I say potentially because just because someone has a SNP, a single nucleotide polymorphism, just because someone has a SNP saying, oh, I have MTHFR, that's people come in all the time. I have MTHFR, so I'm going to be more depressed, and I am going to have heart disease, and I'm going to have that. I can't clean my liver because I have MTHFR. And you're like, no, that's not exactly true. And so we do actually other tests to see if you're expressing genes versus just have the gene. So MTHFR, it means the methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. It's an enzymatic genetic mutation. It's an enzyme that converts your folinic acid into your methyl tetrahydrofolate. That is the active version of folic acid. Folic acid typically doesn't actually exist. It's a crystallized synthetic version made in a laboratory. That then has to get converted to folate, and then, folinic acid, and then there's multiple conversions in there. And then MTHFR is a very specific enzyme that allows you to convert from there to the active form 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Now, a lot of doctors out there, and I was one of these people. I was one of the offenders 8 years ago. And I'd be like, oh, well, you have MTHFR. I need to give you high doses of methylfolate. Let me give you 5 milligrams of methylfolate. You need this. Well, it turns out MTHFR is like a gateway into the playground. It is a genetic variant, and you have MTHFR, MTRR, MTR. You have all of your BHMT and CBS and a lot of genetic SNPs that could be there. Like, let's say someone has a COMT genetic variant, catecholamine O-methyltransferase plus genetic variant, which doesn't allow for the breakdown of dopamine. If you dump a whole bunch of methylfolate into the system because you've just looked at MTHFR, you're going to hypercharge and speed that whole methylation pathway along, and that dopamine is going to go higher and higher, and you're going to become more and more anxious, and you're going like, well, I had anxiety before, so I have to take this, and it's just getting worse and worse. I can't figure out why it's worse. Because you just dumped fire into a system that needed to be cooled down. You can't make any opinion just on one SNP. Now, with that being said, even with all that data, you still want to find out what you're expressing, which metabolites are you creating. On a urine test, if you see uracil or thiamine, it tells you that you need more folate activated into your cells. But if you have MTHFR and your uracil and thiamine are actually normal, you don't need to dump any more methylfolate in because it's going to create more issues. So you basically have such a large amount of control over this. Now, there's environmental things you can talk about. Hey, I wasn't breastfed for a year, so my microbiome was not, I don't have good roots for good bacteria. I'm going to have a bad balance, and I may have an overgrowth of, let's say, Clostridia. High levels of Clostridia in the body, we know, will create higher levels of dopamine. If you have a COMT++ genetic variant where you can't break down dopamine, you're going to have really high levels of dopamine. You're more likely to get schizophrenia and significant anxiety and OCD and depression and all sorts of things there. And the breastfeeding you had for the first year of life is leaving you a terrain, a microbiome that has now allowed you to express that gene. You could say, hey, I grew up in a house with leaky windows and water in the basement and leaky roof. And you go, hey, maybe you have a mold exposure. We do mold exposure. You go, oh, look at that. You're rife with all sorts of molds that can damage your kidney function, damage your liver function, damage your brain, damage your immune system. And oh, Now you're extremely permeable in your gut lining. You have increased intestinal permeability due to all that mold exposure or due to the Clostridium infection. Now all these foods you're pushing through are creating this giant inflammatory cascade. All these inflammatory cascades, all these stressors on your body that we're talking about, just different things that can happen for environmental exposures, are high stress on the body. And those high levels of stress, your body will try to survive. And that's when you start unrolling DNA in order to read it so that you can really protect yourself. Let's see the positive. Like I was talking about interleukin 12 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, which are these inflammatory parts of your body that the medical world is trying to put a biologic and just shut it down. Those things get increased when your gut is damaged, when your liver is damaged, when your adrenal system is down. Those go up. When you fix your gut system, your liver system, and your adrenal system, interleukin 10 goes up, and that blocks those like a biologic drug, except naturally, where you don't end up with cancer. It just have a normal functioning body. So your lifestyle directly affects things. And if you're eating things that are inflammatory all the time, that's a stress on your body. If you have infections, that's a stress on your body. If you have environmental exposures or heavy metals, those are all stressors on your body. If you're deficient in something, if you're toxic in something, those are all stressors. And as you get stressed, your body will try to survive. And so it'll do everything it can to let you know we got a problem. And letting you know we got a problem typically means autoimmune disease. It's basically like a key that sits into a gene and allows you to express something or not express something. So when we say plus on catecholamine O-methyltransferase, that is a highly active gene that then slows down the breakdown of dopamine. So it creates its own issue. So sometimes something being methylated too much is a problem, or being undermethylated is a problem. But methylation is just the activation or inactivation of body processes, and that's controlled by genes. So when we talk about methylation and your ability to methylate, we're talking about your ability or how efficient you are at making certain body processes work from a genetic basis. Now, what's neat about those things is those natural chemicals you can actually buy typically from a store and say, hey, if I'm really not, don't just start taking supplements. It's a bad idea. I go to this enzyme and my chemical stops here, and then it's really not converting. Typically, we can pop that in right there, and all of a sudden you create a pathway you've never had your entire life and go, listen, this is something that you are expressing now. Maybe we fix all these other things and you just start creating. I don't have to supplement that anymore. That's the goal. But if not, fine. You maybe take that the rest of your life, but it's not altering anything. It's just improving your efficiency at creating a certain chemical. And so you mentioned cancers. I might have I have the BRCA2, I have HER2, I have these things that the medical doctors look at and go, hey, you got your double BRCA, you got a 80% likelihood of getting breast cancer. Well, that's something to worry about. But in my world, then I would do just giant hormone testing. And so I look at the metabolic processes of how you break down your estrogens, whether it be 4-hydroxyestrone or 4-hydroxyestradiol or 16-alpha-hydroxyestrone, which are metabolic estrogens that break down, and they're highly inflammatory proliferative estrogens that cause breast cancer, uterine fibroids, ovarian cysts, fibrocystic breast disease, endometriosis, all those type of things. And go, okay, so you have these hormones that you're making, and you have this BRCA, you have HER, whatever. These are genetic variants that predispose people to breast cancer. We can now inhibit and work to pull out these bad estrogens that are causing cancers. So you have a normal level like everyone else. And so you may have to keep up with that and be consistent and be like, all right, we just need to siphon that out, whether we're using DIM or indole-3-carbinol, or we're using calcium D-glucarate, or we're using glutathione, or using phase 1 and phase 2 liver metabolites to break that down. We can do that, retest to make sure it's gone, and go, hey, you're not making proliferative estrogens anymore. Let's just keep doing that, and then you don't have to worry about having your breasts lopped off. Now, you have to be careful, though. So again, you have to know what you're doing. Talk to a real doctor to figure this out. Just because someone's a medical doctor doesn't mean they don't know anything. It typically means they're very good at pharmaceuticals, and they're good at understanding the risks of certain things and how to save your life. Medical doctors are great at saving your life. If you came here and you're bleeding out, you got a horrible car wreck, you're going to die at my clinic because I'm not going to save your life. That's what they do. But they're really not great at making you super healthy the rest of your life either. That's not their goal. Their goal is to save your life. They're just different. They're totally different. If you want to get healthy and feel better, you typically don't go to a medical doctor. When we talk about methylation and activation and deactivation of things, and we're talking about using supplements, these are naturally, like when we talk about DIM, And we're talking about metabolizing through cytochrome 1b1, it's pathway in the liver, metabolizing these proliferative estrogens. We know that DIM fortifies phase 1 liver metabolism to pull through there. DIM is a supplement that exists in dark leafy greens. You want to improve your methylation, dark leafy greens are great. However, then you can get into other pathways where if you do dark leafy greens and you have a CBS, cystathionine beta synthase genetic variant, or BHMT variant, if you have those and you start doing a bunch of greens, well, you may be putting too much sulfur in. Brussels sprouts, things with high sulfur. So there's a pathway called transsulfuration. That's how you detoxify your liver and things like that. It ends up with glutathione. That's your body's major antioxidant system. You speed through transsulfuration, and then because you're going so fast through it, you now are creating glutamate, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter. Now you have anxiety in a different way than dopamine would cause anxiety. You have glutamate, which is static. Everything's happening all the time. You can't figure out how to calm down. And you're like, I eat so much kale. I eat kale all the time. I drink kale juice. I eat kale popsicles, and I just have so much anxiety. It's supposed to help me. Maybe it's not right for you. Nothing's right for everybody. I've realized that over time. Nothing's right for everybody. I've seen it over and over. Like, we're doing everything right. Oh, maybe not for you. Huge problems when you have a phase 1 liver metabolizer, like a lot of kale with the DIM in it, and your phase 2 does not work right. It creates hyper-free radicals. It's 100 times worse than those proliferative estrogens. They become significantly worse when you go through phase 1 and you like, I got to get rid of those. So I'm gonna do all this phase 1 DIM. Like, this is what every doctor, all the natural doctors tell you. Well, let's use some DIM and indole 3-carbinol. That's what we'll do. Except for if their phase 2 doesn't work, it makes it 10 times worse. It would knock out your period. It would make you infertile. It would cause all sorts of other problems. It causes autoimmune disease because it's highly inflammatory. Yeah, I mean, everything has to be tested. Typically what I do when I see those type of hormonal issues is I will use DIM and indole 3-carbinol. I will use that, or calcium D-glucarate, depending on what's going on in the gut tissue, if they're recycling too much bad estrogen, whatever. But what happens is about 1 more month, I take labs again. And if doing that shoots their liver enzymes up really fast, we have a phase 2 problem. So you can't use DIM on those people. Then you have to use something that's balanced to clean out the entire liver. And you have to kind of juice up glutathione, which is your body's major antioxidant, major liver detoxifier, because it's phase 2 as well. And so when you do a strong phase 2, you can kind of suck from the bottom versus just pounding it and then pooling in the middle. The simple way to look at things is this. You eat human food, you have some faith in something, and you move. If you're sedentary, it's like the worst thing in the world. You want to get osteoarthritis? You know what? Over the age of 30, 40, 95% of people just walking down the road have some kind of osteoarthritis, some kind of disc degeneration disease, joint degeneration disease. Only 5% of those have pain, but you can see the morphology change of inappropriately grown bones and things like that because people really don't move. And I love diet. I'm a big diet person. I talk about diet all day long and indulgent, over the top, anti-inflammatory foods. I mean, my anti-inflammatory Thanksgiving dinner, over the top. I like to eat. All those things are important. Moving is probably more important. The book is about overcoming fear because I believe fear is the opposite of faith. Fear is the opposite of love. Fear is the opposite of anything that you believe is a higher power. And anytime you allow fear to guide your decisions, you basically turn your back on any divine guidance. If you believe in a higher power of some sort, you believe that is love, the opposite of which is fear. So if you ever let fear guide a decision, you're turning your back on everything great. So right now, the more we spend time on our phones and all these laptops and all this stuff, looking at Facebook, watching the news, fear sells. Fear is a dopamine hit. We have to step away and go, all this stuff sounds really terrible and I want to get involved and I want to help these things, but everything's going to be okay. Nothing bad's going to happen. It's all going to work out. So I guess if we let fear or anxiety creep into our world, we're not moving, we don't eat right, those are all big deals. Those are the 3 that I think are the biggest. Now there's a lot more though. There's drinking water and cleaning out and getting the right testing to see what's actually happening. Super important, but those are the easiest. So let me preface this by saying, unless it's a cancer patient, genetic testing until we're well into already working with the patient, because I don't want to treat SNPs. I don't want to just treat genetics. I won't do it. It doesn't make sense. Now, if cancer patients were to a point where things are life-threatening and while they're going through chemo and whatnot, I want to find out why they got the cancer in the first place. And I go, okay, so you've already expressed something pretty intensely here. But what we do is we'll do a whole lot of testing to see what genes are expressing themselves. We may run organic acid tests or the hormone tests, or there's a lot of things we would run. Lyme's tests, even there's genetic predispositions to allow Lyme to go chronic, or Epstein-Barr virus to go chronic, which we know can damage your thyroid or damage your liver, or predispose you to nasopharyngeal carcinoma, Burkitt's lymphoma, and Hodgkin's lymphoma as well. And so there's a genetic component that maybe your immune system doesn't work right unless everything's right in it. So, our first thing is, after I get my testing done, is we teach everyone. I have a holistic health educator here, and we actually go through a whole curriculum of something I've created to teach people how to live in a better way and make it as easy as possible and really alter things. We even teach better bad choices. So when you want to cheat, you can do the right thing and cheat. Don't blow out everything when you want to go hang out with your friends. With that being said, once the genetic SNPs come back and I've already treated all these things and everything should be good and they're not, then I go, okay, these things seem to be not fixing. So, hey, you have the CBS genetic variant where you're speeding through and creating too much glutamate, excitatory neurotransmitters. Okay, maybe we use some niacin to slow down methylation around there. Maybe use some L-theanine to calm you down a little bit. We can work on the physiologic manifestation of these genetic variants. And so I would use some supplementation, things like that, but diet is always integral. Exercise is always integral. If you're having all this extra excitement, in your brain, you can't calm down. Working out really intensely slows things down. Those endorphins are great at slowing those pathways down. And also, I think that we are an image of ourselves. We create an image of ourselves. You, in your mind's eye, you see yourself a certain way. I just talked to someone yesterday. She was doing great, severe depression. She got way better on all these things, was doing everything right, lost a bunch of weight, looked amazing. She had acne everywhere. All the acne went away. She looked perfect. And then I see her, I'm like, whoa, what happened? I didn't say that, but I was like, wow, okay, so you have changed quite a bit since the last time I talked to you. And she's like, well, I pulled my hamstring, so I haven't been able to work out. And then the COVID thing happened, and I haven't been able to leave my house. And so I started off doing some better bad choices, and then it just went to bad all the time, and I've kind of given up. And then she's crying, and she's like, I just don't think I can ever get better. I did everything. I'm like, and you did. You're only a month away from being perfect again. You just have to flip back into the idea that you're a healthy person. The hamstring issue stopped her from working out because she couldn't run or do anything what she wanted to do. So as she's sitting sedentary, she started to visualize herself not as an elite athlete who eats elite and is healthy in every way and is succeeding in all levels. Now she's the couch potato, and you know what? I just need some pleasure from something, not from working out. I don't need pleasure from feeling good. What's my quick pleasure? I can get some ice cream. Let's get some ice cream. And then that becomes a habit. Everything's a habit, right? So today, you do the right thing whether you want to or not. Tomorrow, you do the right thing whether you want to or not. You make that agreement with yourself. And then over time, that's just who you are. That childlike voice inside of you is going, no, I want to get ice cream today. No, I don't want to work out today. It shuts up. Because like any kid who asks, I want birthday cake for breakfast. I want birthday cake for breakfast. And mom says no. Mom says no. And you keep doing that over and over. At some point, the kid stops asking. We all have that child inside of us. We have to be a parent to our child. The child is this body who constantly asks for things that it probably shouldn't have. And we want to feel that pleasure because our body is our conduit into this world. We can see, we can taste, we can touch, we can hear, we can smell. It is our perceptive device into this world so we can see the truth. So we want it to feel good. We want to feel good because we are a symbiote. We feel good with our body. But we have to make that agreement that we want what's best for our body. And maybe we have some fun sometimes in a controlled board. There's appropriate boundaries. But when you let the boundaries go, the child will keep asking. It gets more difficult. And that's exactly what happens. People lose their way. But that takes discipline for the parent too. The parent, that's incredible amount of discipline because you have kids and you love them and you want to play with them and you're like, I just want to play. Okay, let's just do whatever you want to do because it's fun and they're like a friend of yours. This is my best friend. They're just like me. But they're going to do all the things that you wanted to do that you probably had enough self-restraint to stop yourself. Now they're going to be asking for those things. And so it's hard to be a good parent. It takes a lot of, it takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of ability to want to work for it. And so I applaud all those people you just talked about, even the ones who've given in and made monsters of their kids, because their kids will probably have really close relationships with them. But I believe those kids probably will have less self-esteem, because when you give boundaries, kids can assert themselves within that world and achieve and say, oh, look at that, I can do all these things. People who have no boundary, they don't have any look to say, this is achievement or that's achievement. It's just do whatever. Not as good. Well, again, we talked about stressors, whether it's biochemical, physiologic, emotional, spiritual even. I was talking to myself in the book. It's I'm a perfectionist. I have to be great at everything. Just last week, I made the decision. I'm like, it's okay that I'm flawed as a human being. Like, it's okay not to be perfect in every way. Like, that's okay. Because I think our mission to be perfect in every possible way leads to pretty harsh criticism of ourselves and others. That book, to me, was more about just accept you, do your best, and then be proud of whatever you've done. You can't be proud of yourself if you don't do your best. I mean, how can you? Yeah, I didn't put any effort into it. I'm really proud of what I did. Like, well, you can do so much more. Like, why would you do that? So I think you should always be proud of yourself, with the caveat that you should always work as hard as you possibly can to be your best. And then you should, no matter what, should be proud of who you are and just know that everything's going to work out. And that alleviates so much stress. And, a lot of times people are like, well, I can't get back to the gym. It's so hard to get back to the gym. It's because you have guilt that you haven't been there for a long time. Don't be guilty. Be proud of who you are, and be proud of the fact that you had the thought to go back to the gym. So now, as the parent of this body, go back to the gym, finding peace, finding happiness, and finding love. I mean, just feeling like loving of yourself allows you to love others too. And that leads to a warmth and kind of eradicates a lot of the fear that would be inside, that anxiety that creates stress and messes with all the methylation in your body and gives you all sorts of chronic diseases. And so that's one way that you can very simply and free stop judging yourself.
Thanks.
How I get well-being is, no matter what, I do work out every single day. And this is for me. That doesn't mean everyone has to do this, but I work out intensely, screaming, pushing weights as heavy as I can go, as many reps as I can go, taking myself beyond what I'm comfortable with. I want my workouts to be semi-unpleasant, at least. So I know that I've accomplished something. I've worked through something. Also, I can't go a whole day without eating some vegetables. If by the end of the day I've eaten all sorts of grass-fed meat and had some fruit or something, and I've never had a vegetable, I need vegetables, because I feel like, all those other stuff is easy. Vegetables are the hardest thing to get people to eat. I need to do that. I get well-being by doing the things that I know are good for me that are more difficult. I don't like to take the easy way, because then I have nothing to be proud of. I mean, it's very clear that the things that you feel pleasure from that you don't have to work for are very fleeting. That pint of ice cream that as soon as you're done eating it, you go, can't believe I just did that. It was fun while I ate it. Can't believe it. And you feel bad at me the whole day. I'm going to lay on my couch and watch TV all day. This is nice. And as soon as you're done, I just wasted an entire day of my life. Go to the gym for an hour, work out like a crazy person, push yourself to the edge, and to a point where you almost feel like you can feel your mortality. And then you get to really respect your life for a very long period of time. So, it's just a total different feel.